The inheritance distribution, my brother claimed it all, but I smiled, knowing something he didn't. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss how this shocking family secret unfolds. The room was tense, filled with the quiet murmurs of relatives and close family friends gathered in our father's study. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, reflecting off the polished oak floors and the shelves stacked with books and awards, symbols of a lifetime of hard work. Today was the day the Miller estate would be divided, the moment our father, Robert Miller, had spent decades building, would finally decide who got what. My brother Ethan, 32, always brimming with confidence, stepped forward with a smug grin, acting as if he'd already won. He scanned the room, making it clear he expected everyone to acknowledge his rightful claim. "I think it's only fair that I take the main estate," he declared, voice echoing across the study. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd, all eyes turning to me, Madison, 28, the youngest of two siblings. They expected me to protest, to argue, but I stayed silent, letting my calm smile speak for itself. Always been the quiet, observant one. The kind of person who notices small details, who reads between the lines, who trusts the lessons my father quietly shared over the years. While Ethan chased instant rewards, flaunted his wealth, and relied on charm and entitlement, I learned patience, strategy, and foresight. I could still hear my father's words in my mind. "Madison, patience and foresight will serve you more than arrogance ever could." At the time, I didn't fully understand. Now, in this moment, I realized the full meaning. My father had anticipated this day, my brother's predictable arrogance, and my ability to uncover what he had hidden all along. As Ethan waited for my response, the tension in the room grew. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. The truth, the secret my father left me, was already mine, and when the time came, I would reveal it, not for revenge, but because it was right. The study felt electric with anticipation. I glanced at Ethan one last time, taking in his smug expression. Little did he know, everything he thought he had claimed was never truly his to take. The room finally settled after Ethan's bold claim, but the air remained thick with tension. Cousins shifted uncomfortably in their seats, aunts and uncles exchanged worried glances, and even the family lawyer seemed hesitant to interrupt the moment. I, Madison, stayed quiet, letting Ethan bask in the temporary illusion of victory. He leaned back in his chair, swirling a glass of water, clearly enjoying the attention and the power he thought he had. I glanced around the study, taking in the details that only someone who knew the house intimately could notice. The way my father's favourite pen rested slightly askew on his desk, the framed photos of past family vacations, the old safe tucked behind the bookcase. My heart beat faster. I had spent years noticing the little things my brother ignored, and I knew our father had left more than just money and property behind. There were clues carefully hidden, meant for someone patient enough to see them. Ethan started talking again, casually bragging about the estate, the cars, and the beach house our father had spent summers at. "Honestly, Madison, you never cared much about money anyway," he said with a smirk, not even pretending to hide the arrogance in his voice. My lips twitched, barely holding back a smile. That smug confidence was exactly what I had expected, and exactly what my father had counted on. I remembered the letters my father had once handed me in secret, warning me that greed could blind even the closest family members. He had always been subtle in his lessons, leaving small hints here and there. At the time, I had thought he was simply encouraging me to be careful with money. Now I realized he had prepared me for this very moment. As the lawyer shuffled papers and murmured the next steps, I noticed the faint outline of a hidden panel near the fireplace. My father had never been obvious with his secrets. Everything required patience and observation. My pulse quickened. The inheritance on the surface was not the real prize. There was something deeper, something hidden that would completely change the outcome. I leaned back slightly in my chair, pretending to relax while my mind raced. Ethan was too busy boasting to notice my gaze lingering on the details he had always ignored. And that was my advantage. I knew where to start, I knew where to look, and I knew that patience would reward me. My father had trusted me with something Ethan could never see coming. The room seemed larger now, almost oppressive with expectation. Greed and hidden truths. The distant ticking of the grandfather clock echoed through the study, each second reminding me that the moment to act would soon arrive. I didn't need to rush. I just needed to watch, wait, and trust the plan my father had left for me. Even as Ethan continued to talk and laugh, assuming he had already won, I smiled quietly to myself. The real inheritance, the part that truly mattered, was still hidden, and I was the only one who could uncover it. After the formalities of the inheritance meeting ended, most of the relatives drifted away, chatting quietly in small groups about the unexpected outcome. Ethan left the study still basking in his self-assured triumph, his grin barely fading. I waited until the last guest had stepped out, leaving the house eerily quiet, the heavy scent of polished wood and old books lingering in the air. This was my moment. I walked deliberately to my father's desk, running my fingers along the edge, feeling the familiar grooves he had carved decades ago. My eyes scanned the surface, the drawers, and the corners. Something about the arrangement of his personal items, his pens, notebooks, and framed photos, always seemed deliberate. I pulled open the bottom drawer and found an envelope tucked behind a stack of unopened letters. My heart skipped a beat. It was addressed to me in my father's handwriting. For Madison, when the time is right. Inside were detailed instructions, cryptic at first glance, pointing toward a hidden compartment somewhere in the house. My pulse quickened as I read, realizing my father had left clues for me to follow, a scavenger hunt designed to protect his true legacy. He had anticipated Ethan's arrogance, knowing he would never notice the small, subtle hints. The instructions led me to check behind the bookcase in the study. I pressed the edges, tapping lightly along the wood. After a few moments, a soft click echoed as a panel shifted open, revealing a narrow passageway behind it. My breath caught. The hidden compartment wasn't just a safe or a box. It was a small room, carefully concealed, filled with decades of documents, journals, and personal artifacts that even Ethan, with all his bravado, would never dream of discovering. Inside, I found letters my father had written, some addressed to me, others explaining long-held family secrets. There were deeds to properties no one knew existed, stock certificates and records of charitable trusts he had set up in my name. He had protected his wealth and legacy from those who would misuse it, carefully hiding it behind layers of subtlety and clever design. A journal caught my eye. Flipping through it, I discovered detailed accounts of my father's dealings, the struggles he had faced, and the careful planning that went into preserving the family's honour. It was clear he had always intended for me to inherit not just the material wealth, but the knowledge, the responsibility, and the power that came with it. As I absorbed the information, I felt a mix of awe, gratitude, and determination. Every lesson my father had taught me, every quiet word of advice, every subtle warning, it all made sense now. He had trained me to be patient, observant, and wise, and this hidden inheritance was his ultimate test of my readiness. I paused for a moment, listening to the faint creak of the house, half expecting Ethan to appear and spoil everything. But he was gone, still blind to the truth. My father had trusted me, and I would honour that trust. This hidden room, this secret knowledge, it was my inheritance, and I knew exactly how to protect it. The room felt almost sacred, a private sanctuary that connected me to my father, his wisdom, and the legacy he had worked so hard to preserve. And in that quiet, hidden space, I realized that the real battle was only just beginning, not against my brother, but against the expectations, greed, and threats that lurked beyond the walls of this house. The hidden room smelled faintly of old wood and leather, a mix of nostalgia and secrecy that made my heart race. As I stepped fully inside, I realized this wasn't just a place to store documents. It was a carefully curated vault of our family's history, our father's private thoughts, and the true legacy he had worked to protect. Every item had meaning, every object a purpose, and my pulse quickened with anticipation. Stacks of folders sat neatly on a shelf, each labelled with years and initials. I pulled one down, labelled Family Matters 1990-95, revealing it letters and legal documents that painted a completely different picture of our inheritance than what everyone at the distribution had assumed. There were deeds to properties no one in the family had ever known about, some in other states, some in small towns my father had quietly invested in. A thick, leather-bound journal caught my eye, Flipping it open, I discovered a detailed account of my father's dealings, personal reflections, and candid commentary on our family dynamics. It was clear he had always known Ethan's arrogance would lead him to underestimate me. In one passage, my father wrote, "Ethan will rush in with confidence. Madison, patience and observation will reveal truths he will never see." My lips curled into a knowing smile. Among the documents, I found something even more shocking. Evidence of people outside our family who had tried to take advantage of our father's wealth. Letters from lawyers, old threats, and warnings were neatly filed, proving that the Miller legacy was not just about money, it was about protecting the family from those who would exploit it. My father had entrusted me with this knowledge, knowing I could handle it wisely. A small envelope addressed simply, "For Madison Emergency," trembled slightly in my hand. Inside were instructions on how to secure the hidden assets in case someone attempted to interfere. He had even anticipated that Ethan or someone else might stumble upon hints, leaving layers of misdirection to ensure only I would find the real inheritance. The weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders, but it was the kind of weight I welcomed. As I explored further, I discovered a set of photographs and letters that revealed secrets about extended family members. Some who had deceived our father, some who had betrayed his trust for selfish gain. I realized that the true inheritance wasn't just financial. It was knowledge, strategy, and insight, things that would protect the family for generations to come. The more I uncovered, the more I understood my father's meticulous planning. Every detail of his life had been a lesson, every hidden object a test. And now that I had found this room, the pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Ethan may have claimed the estate outwardly, but he had no idea what was truly waiting for me. I paused for a moment, taking it all in. The hidden room wasn't just a place. It was a vault of power, a secret my father had guarded carefully until he knew I was ready. The thrill of discovery mixed with a sense of duty, knowing that I was the only one who could honor his trust. Outside, the house was quiet, but I knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Secrets like these have a way of attracting attention and danger. The quiet of the house didn't last long. Just as I was carefully organizing the documents and studying the journals, I heard a faint creak from the hallway outside the hidden room. My heart jumped. At first I thought it was my imagination. After all, the old house always groaned, but the sound repeated, deliberate and slow. Someone was moving through the study. I froze, listening. The house was vast, with long hallways and multiple entrances, but this intruder had moved with precision, like they knew exactly where to go. My mind raced. Could Ethan have returned? No. He was too arrogant and careless. This was someone else. Someone who had been watching, waiting for an opportunity to get to what my father had hidden. I quickly scanned the hidden room for anything I could use to protect myself and the documents. A heavy book lay on the shelf, a perfect tool for defense if necessary. My pulse pounded as I considered my options. I couldn't let anyone discover this room. Not Ethan. Not a greedy relative. Not some outsider with bad intentions. The footsteps grew louder, stopping just outside the secret panel. Whoever it was seemed to sense the room's presence. I held my breath, pressing myself against the far wall, silently hoping the intruder would pass. But curiosity or instinct drew them closer. A hand reached toward the panel, brushing it lightly. My heart thudded in my chest. Then I remembered one of my father's instructions from the emergency envelope. Trust your instincts and protect what is yours. Some may not value it as you do. I slid the panel closed, just enough to hide the opening, and quietly tiptoed toward the back exit of the room, keeping my eyes on the intruder. Whoever this person was, they would not find the true inheritance without my guidance. The tension in the house was unbearable. Each creak of the floor, each shadow moving along the walls, made me more aware of the danger surrounding the hidden treasures. The journals, the letters, the deeds. They weren't just family mementos anymore. They were targets. The stakes were no longer about winning a legal battle or proving my father's intentions. They were about survival and protecting what my father had entrusted to me. As I cautiously stepped out of the hidden room, I caught a glimpse of a figure in the corner of the study. Tall, shadowed, and deliberate. Whoever it was, they were determined, experienced, and dangerous. I realized that the inheritance and the secret my father had left had drawn more than just family attention. There were outsiders willing to cross lines, to manipulate, to take what didn't belong to them. I had a choice: confront the threat now and risk exposing the room, or stay hidden, gather all the information and plan a counter-strategy. My father had prepared me for this moment, and I knew patience and foresight were my best tools. The first real test of courage and intelligence had arrived. For the first time, the inheritance felt less like money and more like a responsibility, a puzzle and a secret legacy that someone would kill to obtain. I knew that from this moment on I couldn't rely on luck or chance, only my wits, my instincts, and the lessons my father had instilled in me. Even after the intruder left, or at least retreated, I couldn't shake the tension in the house. My pulse still raced, and the documents in my hands suddenly felt heavier than ever. What my father had left me wasn't just a financial inheritance. It was a responsibility, a test of character, and now a matter of survival. I realized that protecting it would demand more than patience and observation. It would require courage, emotional strength, and the ability to confront those I had once trusted. As I sat at the edge of my father's desk, the memories of our family began flooding back. Ethan, with his relentless arrogance, had always believed he was the favourite, the one my father would trust most. But my father's subtle nods, the quiet lessons, the late-night talks he had with me when Ethan was out chasing ambition, they now made perfect sense. My father had always seen my patience, my insight, and my foresight as the true measures of responsibility. And yet, knowing that didn't make the emotional conflict any easier. Ethan had genuinely believed he was entitled to everything. He had smiled, laughed, and acted as though he had won. I had to reconcile the love I once felt for my brother with the understanding that his greed had blinded him, and that his arrogance could have endangered not only the inheritance but our family's safety. I opened another folder from the hidden room and found letters my father had written specifically about Ethan. In them, he documented everything: his missteps, his impulsive decisions, his moments of selfishness, and the lessons he had tried to teach him. My father had clearly anticipated Ethan's behaviour at the inheritance distribution. He wasn't punishing him, he was protecting the family and guiding me. Tears pricked my eyes as I read a note my father had left for me personally. Madison, always remember that wisdom is stronger than wealth, and patience is stronger than impatience. Protect what matters and you will honour this family. The words weren't just instructions. They were a reminder that love and foresight mattered more than any legal document or property deed. I knew I had to act carefully. Ethan couldn't understand the weight of what he had claimed, and he certainly couldn't grasp the dangers that lurked outside. But I had to decide, should I confront him immediately with the truth? Or should I wait, plan, and ensure that when the moment came, justice would be served in a way that preserved both the inheritance and our family's legacy? The decision gnawed at me. On one hand, my brother's arrogance demanded a reckoning. On the other, my father had taught me restraint, strategic thinking, and the importance of timing. I realized that the real battle wasn't just about money. It was about wisdom, foresight, and proving that the values my father had instilled in me were stronger than greed and entitlement. By the time I closed the folder and took a deep breath, I felt a mix of determination, sorrow, and clarity. This inheritance wasn't just a prize, it was a responsibility, a secret legacy, and a test of everything my father had taught me. I knew that the challenges ahead would test not just my intelligence, but my emotional strength, patience, and the bonds of family. For the first time, I fully understood the depth of my father's plan. Ethan might have claimed the estate on the surface, but the real inheritance, the one that mattered most, was in my hands. And I was ready to protect it, reveal it when the time was right, and honour the man who had always believed in me. The next morning, the house was quiet, almost deceptively so. I returned to the hidden room, my mind focused and sharp, knowing there was still more to uncover. My father's instructions had led me this far, but I sensed there were final pieces, documents, deeds, and letters that would cement the truth and ensure the inheritance was legally and morally mine. I carefully sifted through every folder, every envelope, every journal. In one corner, behind a stack of old family photographs, I discovered a small, locked box. It was simple, unassuming, yet I felt an electric pulse of anticipation. My father had always liked puzzles and tests, and this box was the culmination of his plan. The combination was written subtly in one of his letters, encoded in a way only I could decipher. With trembling hands, I unlocked the box. Inside were deeds to multiple properties, bank account documents, and a set of legal papers. An official trust that named me as the rightful inheritor of the estate my brother had arrogantly claimed. My heart raced. This wasn't just proof. It was irrefutable, legally binding evidence that my father had prepared for me, knowing that only someone patient, observant, and trustworthy could claim it. Among the papers, I found letters from my father explaining his reasoning, his hopes for our family, and warnings about the dangers that came with greed and entitlement. He had anticipated Ethan's predictable arrogance and had deliberately left the true inheritance hidden until I was ready. The realization hit me fully. The estate Ethan thought he had won was only superficial. The real legacy, the one that mattered most, had always been meant for me. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway outside the hidden room. My heart skipped a beat. Someone was approaching. It could be Ethan. It could be a relative or an outsider who had caught wind of the hidden inheritance. My pulse quickened, but I forced myself to stay calm. I knew exactly what I had to do. I carefully arranged the documents in my bag, making sure nothing was left behind. Every step I took, every movement I made, was deliberate. The intruder entered the study, their shadow stretching across the floor. My breath caught, but I remained composed. Whoever it was would not find the evidence or disrupt what my father had meticulously planned. This was the moment I had been waiting for. My father had trusted me with his final secrets, and I was determined not to fail him. I had patience, strategy, and foresight on my side, the qualities Ethan lacked entirely. The inheritance was mine to protect, mine to reveal at the right moment, and mine to use wisely. I glanced back at the locked box, the journals, and the letters one last time, feeling a surge of gratitude and determination. My father had always known I would be ready. And now, as the intruder drew closer, I was fully prepared to face the challenge, safeguard the inheritance, and finally prove that wisdom and patience triumph over arrogance and greed. The intruder's footsteps grew louder, deliberate, echoing through the study like a drumbeat of danger. I stayed hidden in the shadows, clutching the journals and legal documents tightly. Whoever had come here knew something was hidden, but they had no idea that I was prepared. My father's foresight and lessons guided every move I made. The figure stepped closer to the hidden panel. My pulse raced, but I forced myself to stay calm. This was the moment of truth. I stepped out from the shadows, my voice steady and commanding. "Stop right there," I said. The intruder froze, surprised by my presence. It was Ethan. His smug grin had vanished, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. "Madison, what are you doing in here?" he asked, trying to mask the nervousness in his voice. I held up the documents, letting the weight of the papers speak for themselves. "You've claimed the estate on the surface, Ethan, but you forgot one thing. Dad's real legacy was never about who shouted the loudest or who thought they were entitled. He trusted me with the truth, and I found it." Ethan's face paled as he realized the gravity of the situation. I calmly laid out the deeds, bank documents, and the legal trust that named me the rightful inheritor. All of this, every property, every account, every asset was hidden for a reason. Only someone patient, observant, and trustworthy could claim it. And that's why it's mine. He stammered, trying to argue, to twist the facts, but I held firm. My father's letters, the journals, and the hidden room provided irrefutable proof. The arrogance that had carried him this far offered him no protection now. As I spoke, the tension in the room thickened. Our relatives, who had returned to see why I had been gone so long, now crowded the doorway. Their faces reflected shock, curiosity, and a dawning understanding. I glanced at them, letting the silence sink in. Ethan had lost, not just the estate, but the illusion of control he had clung to for so long. "I hope you understand, Ethan," I said softly, my voice calm but firm, "that this isn't about revenge. It's about honouring Dad's trust and protecting what he built. Everything he left for me is now my responsibility, and I will protect it." He looked down, defeated, and for the first time I saw a glimmer of humility. The arrogance that had blinded him for so long was gone. replaced by the realization that patience, wisdom, and foresight were stronger than entitlement. The climax of the inheritance battle was over. The estate, the hidden assets, and the true legacy were now mine. My father's plan had succeeded. He had entrusted me with not just wealth, but with responsibility, knowledge, and the strength to protect our family's future. As Ethan quietly left the study, the weight in the room shifted. The air no longer carried tin or fear, but a sense of resolution and justice. I had uncovered the truth, protected my father's legacy, and proven that wisdom and patience always triumph over arrogance and greed. The house finally felt calm, almost serene, after the storm of confrontation and revelation. Ethan had retreated to his own space, quietly reflecting on what had happened, while I sat in my father's study, absorbing the gravity of the day. The documents, the hidden room, and the carefully preserved journals weren't just proof of my inheritance. They were a testament to my father's foresight, patience, and trust in me. I walked slowly through the house, touching the familiar objects, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. This was more than money or property. It was a legacy of wisdom, foresight, and family honor. Every choice I made now would reflect the values my father had instilled in me. The estate was mine, yes, but so was the duty to protect it, nurture it, and honor the principles my father had lived by. As I reviewed the final documents one last time, I noticed a letter addressed to the family, written in my father's elegant script. He had anticipated every reaction, every potential conflict, and had left a message to guide all of us. The true inheritance is not what is visible. It is patience, wisdom, integrity, and love. Those who understand this will carry the family forward. I felt a surge of gratitude and a deep emotional connection to him. All the years of quiet guidance, subtle lessons, and gentle warnings had led to this moment. My father's legacy was complete, not because of wealth alone, but because he had entrusted it to someone who would honor it fully. Ethan eventually approached me, his demeanor humble for the first time in years. There were no harsh words, no arguments, just a quiet acknowledgement that he had been wrong, that my patience and foresight had won, where arrogance and entitlement had failed. I nodded, offering a small smile. Forgiveness wasn't about weakness. It was about understanding, growth, and family. I stepped out of the study into the sunlit hallway, feeling the house breathe with life and history. I knew the challenges weren't over. Protecting this inheritance and upholding our family's legacy would require wisdom and care, but I was ready. I had the guidance, the tools, and the insight to navigate whatever came next. Looking around, I realized that this journey had taught me far more than I could have imagined. It wasn't just about the inheritance, it was about discovering my own strength, resilience, and the power of patience and foresight. The legacy my father left wasn't only for me, it was a blueprint for life, for family, and for the future. As I closed the door to the hidden room one final time, I smiled quietly. The estate, the secrets, and the true inheritance were now secure. And I knew deep in my heart that my father's trust had not been misplaced.